So I have talked a lot about work. I've talked about Rotary. What did I make of family work balance? I remember that in the UN, we used to have surveys almost every year, and they would ask us, how do you rate your family work balance? And every single person in the UN would say, oh, we've got it under control. But that wasn't true. It was a very delicate balance. When people are giving jobs, they want to do their best, which is normal. But sometimes we go overboard. To the detriment of our families, we pay more allegiance to work. And therefore, sometimes our families suffer. We have people, we had a World Health Organization Director General whose son committed suicide. She had been a prime minister of Norway for years. And then she came as as a Director General of WHO. And the son committed suicide and left a suicide note. And that is the hardest thing for a parent. When a child says, Mom, you were never there for us. It was work, work, work. You traveled the work. We virtually grew up on our own. That rang a bell because that balance is very easily broken when we pay too much allegiance to our work than to our families. How much work is too much work? We all want to do well, but there's a point where we must know, no, my family comes first. I need to take care of them. We ask ourselves, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? The job that has been given me, am I doing enough? My position in this is, I do work to the best of my ability. My ability is the only thing I can rely on. I cannot do more work than I am able to. Therefore, I give it my all, but my all is all I have. I can't do better than my all. So I give it my best shot, but that's all I have. If you think that I'm not doing enough, you might want to look for somebody who can do more. But for me, it ends here. I've done it. So as I'm saying this, because as young people, you will be faced with that dilemma. Family work balance. How much should I be doing? How much more should I be doing? And I'm sure there are lots of you older colleagues in the audience who know what I'm talking about, and you will be able to share with the younger ones what I'm saying. But we always need to think about our family work balance. Now, very briefly, let me talk about polio because I want to give you a few minutes to ask questions. Polio eradication is Rotary's flagship project. Rotary started this before the partners joined on. One disease had been eradicated from the world, and that's smallpox. And Rotary found out that because polio is a vaccine-preventable disease, if we did vaccinate every child, then there would be no polio. And therefore, Rotary started with polio eradication in 1985. The partners joined in 1988, and a lot of work has been done. And so the question remains, if so much has been done, why is polio not yet eradicated? And like I told you, from the 1st of July, I'm the End Polio Now coordinator, and I'm supposed to explain why that is not yet eradicated. These are just some things. World Polio Day was on Monday. Today is Wednesday. I was on Morning Live for SABC that week. I was on the radio FM for SABC, and we did Savik that were at Sefaka Makato, and 3 Rotary clubs. That's my club, the Rotary Club of Professor Katerere, that is Pretoria Capital, and the Rotary Club of Pretoria Hatfield. We all joined together to raise awareness for polio and to do a vaccination campaign. We do so because it's important, because like I will tell you right now, people don't know what polio is. So what is poliomyelitis? Polio is a disease caused by a virus. It's spread from person to person, and typically it would be feces, because when people who have polio defecate, the virus is passed out in the feces. And if that feces, for some reason or another, comes into contact with somebody's mouth, or if it's in a water body or in food, contaminates food, especially salads and things which are not well washed, people can be infected with polio. But let me add there at once, this is mostly with people who are not vaccinated against polio. In this country, polio vaccination is given to children at birth and at several intervals during their childhood. But as we know, some people, even if they delivered in the hospital, might not get the vaccine, or for one reason or another, they get the birth dose of the vaccine and don't go back for the subsequent booster doses. Polio attacks the nervous system, and it is only one case out of 200 who are infected who will be paralyzed. And this infection is mainly in children under 5. It is true some adults have got it, but usually it's with children under the age of 5. There is no cure to polio, but polio can be prevented with highly effective vaccines. And you as pharmacy students, I'm sure you know about the polio vaccines. I'll talk briefly about them. But this picture on the right, I don't know if any of you knows about the iron lung. When polio was very rampant and thousands of people were getting a paralysis every year, some people, the breathing muscles of many stopped working. And so to be alive, they had to be in a machine called the iron lung. We still have 2 in this country, the iron lung. If you go to NICD in Johannesburg, they have an iron lung in one of the entrances to remind people that once upon a time there was polio here. There's also an iron lung in the Wits University Museum. So if anybody wants to see an iron lung, you can go there and see that. Now, this is for the benefit of our pharmacy students. We have 2 kinds of polio vaccine. We have the killed virus vaccine, which is an injectable vaccine developed by Mr. Salk, and we have the live attenuated vaccine, which is an oral polio vaccine developed by Mr. Sabin. They both are good at preventing a disease, and they can really control a disease for large numbers. However, when there is a campaign for a polio vaccination campaign in many countries, it's the oral polio vaccine that is used because of its ease of use. And the oral polio vaccine has also been known to be the ones now that wherein when somebody has the oral polio vaccine, there's a risk that the virus in their stool, the virus in them might mutate and become virulent again. Because remember, this virus in the Sabin vaccine is not killed. It's live, but it's attenuated, which means its potency has been weakened. So these 2 vaccines are working, and South Africa's vaccination schedule has oral polio vaccine at birth, and thereafter 6 weeks, 14 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 14 weeks, they have the injectable polio vaccine. So vaccination works. How far have we come with the polio eradication effort so far? Rotary has done a lot of work. We and our partners have contributed billions of dollars, and the money goes for different things, for training people to vaccinate, for buying the vaccines, for transporting the vaccines. And over the years, 3 billion children, over 3 billion have been immunized. And we know that because of the vaccines, 19 million cases have been averted. So 19 million people could have been paralyzed, but because of the vaccination, that has been prevented. We also know that 1.5 million childhood deaths have been prevented. Really, it's done a whole lot of work. And in polio strengthening all in countries, the facilities that are put for polio eradication are also used to help with other vaccine preventable diseases, measles, typhoid, and the rest. So as we speak, there were 3 types of wild poliovirus. Well, poliovirus 1, 2, and 3. 2 of these types have been eradicated, the virus 2 and virus 3. Only the wild poliovirus 1 is still endemic. And it is not even endemic all over the world. It is endemic mainly in Afghanistan and Pakistan. That is where it's still running endemic. But recently, In this year, 2020, we have had a resurgence of some cases in 2 countries. We've had a resurgence in Malawi last year, 1 case, and as we speak, Mozambique, 7 cases this year, which means that vaccination has not got to every child, because if people are still being infected and becoming paralytic, then they've not been vaccinated. So some of the challenges we have is this resurgence, as we say, and resurgence for several reasons. People move, there's disruption of vaccinations. COVID was a big one. For 2 years, people were told not to leave their homes. So if a child wasn't sick, the child wasn't taken for routine vaccination, and therefore it reduced the coverage in many places. And of course, there are some people who don't live next to health centers. So since nobody was out, no vaccines were carried out to far-flung places. There are some cultural barriers. Some people say they won't vaccinate their children for all kinds of reasons. And we know that when there's civil unrest, people move, people flee from their homes. They go either other places in their countries, which we call internally displaced people, or become refugees that is going outside their countries, and they cannot get vaccinated. Here in South Africa, we have a large population of migrants who are not documented, but they're living here. So because they don't have valid papers, many of them don't go to the health facilities to get vaccinated because they might be traced as non-documented migrants. So I'm sure we do have a large proportion of children here who are not vaccinated. These are some of the reasons why polio is not yet vaccinated. If I asked any of you in the audience, do you know polio? I don't know whether many of you have seen a polio case or a physically handicapped person. Therefore, very short memory. A few years ago, there were 350,000 cases a year, virtually 1,000 cases a day. Now you don't see it. So we are complacent. We think polio is gone. Vaccines are not available. The information sharing, it can be lack of information completely, or the wrong information inadvertently, or wrong information willfully. People just tell you something wrong. And you as pharmacy students know about vaccine hesitancy and vaccine refusal. Some people don't want to hear about it. They have all kinds of conspiracy theories why they think vaccines don't work. These are some of the reasons. And then, of course, the fact that some countries might have all the right reasons, but just don't have vaccine. I visited, in my last district governor visit, I was in a country next door to us, and I spoke, the Minister of Health told us, we have no vaccines. It's not because we don't have money for it, but the stock, how we procure, the procurement process is faulty. So by the time the vaccines are finished, what we have ordered hasn't come. So it's either inadequate funding or inappropriate planning. So this is it. So why should we eradicate polio? These are 5 reasons. We need to improve lives. 16 million people are non-paralyzed today who would otherwise have been paralyzed if they had not been vaccinated. We need to invest in the future. If the children are well and they are not paralyzed, then if we don't do that, about 200,000 children could be paralyzed every year from polio. We need to improve child health because the polio networks also serve for other childhood diseases. It is not it's a no-brainer to know that if there people don't have polio, then the country saves money because it's a lot of money to take care of the physically disabled people. And so that's it. And lastly, but importantly, we want to be part of history. Only one human disease has been eradicated before, and that's smallpox. We want to be part of the reason why polio is being eradicated. We should be part of that history. So for Rotarians and non-Rotarians, we all say everybody needs to be aware of the facts about polio. You can't tell somebody to vaccinate if you don't know what polio is, if you can't talk about it with some certainty. And so we need to be raising awareness about polio. I am telling everybody who wants to hear, polio is next door in Mozambique. Mozambique is a bus ride away. It's less than an hour's plane ride away. People can be infected here. And therefore, we need to be advocates for polio eradication and polio vaccination. Lastly, we need to donate towards polio. All the things they do, vaccines and all that costs money. And Rotarians are asked every year to donate a little bit to polio. And in a Rotary Club, they'll tell you about that. So this is what we say, together we will, because we can. And we need to be part of this history that will eradicate polio worldwide. And I want to end with a saying, or some sayings from the past RI president, Sheikha Mehta, who was the president when I was district governor. Sheikha, who is from India and who has seen suffering firsthand, says, service is the rent we pay for the space that we occupy on earth. We are here for a reason. We are alive for a reason. The least we can do is pay back. So that's service. And he goes on to say, we have the power and the magic to serve to change lives. The theme of his year as RI president was serve to change lives. And we all can do that wherever we are in as small a way as possible. And together we can, he says, together we will. Because if we have the will to serve, we can do it. So we just need to be able to say, yes, we can, and we will. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I have my email address down there. If there are any questions you would love to ask me about myself, about my professional life, about my career or my Rotary life, you're welcome to sending me an email. I'm a busy person, but I tell you, those who know me know I always get back to people if they have a valid question. Now, if they're asking me how to get a job into the UN, I might not help you there. I'm no longer there. But if you want me to tell you what you can do to make yourself qualified for a job in the UN, you're welcome. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anyangwe. Very enlightening talk, and lots of history, but also lots of new knowledge. I didn't even know that Kenya, Nigeria, and Cameroon at some point were, So I need to go and read my African history a little bit more. Yeah. And even the issue of the iron lung was also quite, yeah.
Wow.
All right. So we will allow for comments or questions if there are any. Any questions? The students are always timid. So if we have visitors, they can ask questions. Or yeah.
The students should not be timid. This is your chance to see me and ask me anything. Otherwise, it might not be possible.
Yeah. But I just wanted to then maybe emphasize a few things that I picked up. The fact that, you went to study abroad and you didn't stay there. You always came back. Why was that?
Honestly, that's a good question. Thank you very much, Professor Katerere. One thing was I was passionate about teaching, and I was passionate about teaching in my country. I mean, I came back. I went to England for nephrology. I came right back and did the work I was supposed to do. I went for postgraduate epidemiology in the US, 5 years. I could have stayed. I had colleagues, 12 of us were sent on a scholarship. Less than 4 of us returned home. But I was committed to my university. I wanted it to be one of the best. But then you come home and you are very quickly disillusioned, because the things you thought you could change just with knowledge and science, the world doesn't work like that. They don't want to hear the truth.
Yeah.
They don't. So when I decided to leave at the end of 1993, I had just taught for 3 years and I had it. Because whatever you suggested, this works, this doesn't work. Politics, they are doing something else for reasons. So that's a tough one. But I kept on saying, wherever I was, I would do the best to serve the community where I was. And so during my years as WHO rep in the different countries, I made sure that the populations were served. So you don't need to be in your country to serve. Wherever you are, you just do the service, and it works. While politics are going on in your own home country.
Yeah, because you can never really control the politics. I think
correct.
a lot of I'm also in that space, I guess. I could have stayed somewhere else, but I chose to come back. But sometimes you do question why you came back.
True.
Yeah. And then the issue of networks for me was very important, because your career really, the trajectory that it took always had to do with the fact that you invested in networks. So going to the US, that was somebody, a professor involved, coming back, leaving Cameroon to Zambia. So if you had burnt your bridges with the professors you met along the way, some of these things. So maybe talk a little bit just about networks and networking.
Okay, I think that's partially true. One, you must be a student. You don't need. When I was teaching, I used to tell my students, I will mark you not only for the right answers you have, but I will grade you also for effort. You must be seen to be making an effort. You might not be the best in class, but if you're the best who's gone from 2/10 to 6/10, you really have made an effort. More effort than somebody who went from 7/10 to 8/10, you see. So effort is something you reward. And all through my career, I made it clear that, and whatever it was, I always said yes to whatever was asked of me. Even if I didn't know what to do, I would go and find out how to do it. Yes.
Okay.
You say yes and you go learn how to do it, because everything can be done. Yes. I can't tell you how many times I was the first in doing ABC. I mean, the first female MD PhD in my country, there's the first, because I love a challenge. I take the challenge, and I'm saying, if it was asked of me, then somebody thinks it's possible, I'll go do it. So that's what it is. I'll go do it. So effort is something. You're right about networks. When people know that you try to do your best, they will remember you for that. You might not have been the best person in it, but you gave it your best shot. They appreciate that. And I've not always been the best student all over now, or the best in anything. Lastly, I am a straight talker. I tell it as it is. When I went to the US to study for 5 years, I was in New Orleans, which was a majority Black town. It was a 60% Black town before Hurricane Katrina came and changed the demographics. And so when I got there, I said, well, I'm here as an African student. If somebody sees me on the street, they need to know this is an African student. I wore African clothes, including a doek, for 5 years. Because somebody should see me. They shouldn't ask, where are you from? Which state? No, it was clear I was different. And so I would come to class and somebody would say, oh, I love your costume. And I would look them straight in the face. I said, this is not a costume. This is my clothes.
Okay.
So I took pride in what I was and in what I was doing. You've got to be proud of yourself. You've got to be proud of yourself and who you are. So let nobody define you. You've got to define yourself. But to define yourself, you've got to be sure of what you're talking about. Don't open your mouth if you don't know what it is you're talking about. You look foolish. Silence is golden if you don't know what you're talking about. So that's that.
And I use the word efforting. So I make up this word called efforting, and I tell the students that efforting is a thing. Being seen to be putting effort is, in a sense, more important than, like you're saying, being smart. So then they're asking about whether you went with your child and your daughter to, and hopefully the husband as well.
Listen,
husbands always get left behind.
Thank you for asking that question. That is why I tell you work-life balance matters. When I was with my family, okay, well, first of all, I said I went to the US to do epidemiology. I was there for 1 year and I decided I couldn't continue without the family. And I brought the children. My husband was a professor of law in university in Cameroon. I didn't want to disrupt his career, so he stayed back at home and I was with the kids. Then I returned home in 1990 and we were together till 1993. And in 1994, when I went to Zambia, I took the family with me. In fact, I took my kids with me, and my husband was still in university. And I told him, listen, you check the atmosphere there. If you think it's better for you to come over to Zambia, there's a University of Zambia here, which is what he did 1 year afterwards. He joined us and we were there till I left for the WHO in Brazzaville. So actually Zambia is second home to us because we've lived a total of more than 10 years there. My husband was professor there till we came back to South Africa. But then when I started going from place to place, I went from Brazzaville, couldn't take my family. My children were in boarding school in Nairobi.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I
Okay.
I left them in boarding school all that turning around. I left them in boarding school because I thought it was the best thing for them. We went to upmarket boarding schools, British run, and I knew they were safe and I knew they were having a good education. So I went to Brazzaville alone. I went to Seychelles alone. I went to Mali alone. Seychelles had no university. My husband couldn't join. Mali was French speaking. My husband couldn't come and teach there. And so for 7 years, I worked without a family. But that tells you that I spent a lot of money on communication. We would talk almost every day. You had to pay for the phone calls. We met every term. With the travel, the kids from Nairobi to wherever, you just had to make sure you met. You couldn't save money for the sake of the family. So some things gave. You had to spend to make sure the family cohesion was together. When I was leaving Seychelles in 2001, my son left for university in the UK. I took him to the UK. And the following year, my daughter followed. I took her to the UK. So they were in university when I went to Mali. When I came back to Zambia, my husband joined me back in Zambia. And by that time, the kids had left home. And now I ask them, and now they are truthful to me. They said, Mom, we were in boarding school, but we would have just loved to be home with our parents. Well, I couldn't help it then. I couldn't be all these places with no schools and have them. So those are some sacrifices we made for them. But thank God they turned out right, because some people send their kids to boarding school and could never retrieve them.
Well,
so that's a difficulty.
But they could also be at home just sleeping in their rooms and you never see them. Well,
that is true.
Thank you very much. I think we will now come to a close, and I'd like to thank you because I think you pointed out particular opportunities for pharmacists when you were talking about, logistics in the supply chain, and also just in public health in general. So I think the students kind of now have ideas that you don't just have to work in in the retail sector to make an impact. There are many, many different ways in which you can make an impact even bigger than your community. So that's important.
If I can add a word there, pharmacy students are health sciences students. They should try to know a little more about health than only the pharmaceutical sector. So now we've talked about polio. Go read up about polio, because if you're working in the retail sector, if somebody enters your pharmacy and they say, I have a headache, you try and help them see how they can prevent disease. And it's just by reading up several things that you get to that. Have a little more information at your fingertips than just the medications you prescribe, you dispense. I think it's important, because in my country, Cameroon, very few people will go to the hospital. They'll just go straight to a pharmacy and tell the pharmacist, my tummy is running. Or my head is aching. So in the end, the pharmacists have a big job to let people know. If you have a headache, it could be hypertension. It could be this. It could be malaria. The different things. So, but if you don't know health, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So I would advise pharmacy students to learn about the medications, but go ahead and know a little more about health and disease. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, they have an assignment. So the assignment is to pull up the Road to Health document,
Chart.
and then look at all the different diseases that are being vaccinated for. So they will submit that in 2 days' time. They know that.
I see Professor Beverly has sent a message that your schools, TUT and SMU, have a large clinical component. It's a good thing to do. Then,
Yes.
I mean, doctors and pharmacists really need to work hand in hand. And the pharmacists need to know almost as much as the doctors do, or they might not be prescribing, but they should know health and disease. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. And I mean, I think your life really shows lifelong learning and also just passion, because that's kind of what's carried you through, and mostly service to humanity. And for that, may you be blessed and continue to be blessed. So
thank you so much. Thank you.
And I'd like to thank you very much, and just quote, I think, one thing that you said, and for the students, that my all is all I have. Because yes, sometimes we do tend to think that we can dig much deeper than we actually can just, bring up. So let's do what we've got to do. But at the end of the day, let's also recognize that we have limits, and that there are also stakeholders in our lives who are sometimes more important than the paymaster. So with that true legend, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you so much, and good luck to the students in your work. May you be successful. Thank you. And thank you, Professor Katerere, for having me. Thank you so much.